US ED staff already had their hands full treating patients presenting with influenza. Now there is another pathogen to be concerned about, a novel coronavirus. Everything seemed so simple, and the future overwhelmingly optimistic as we stood together and took the physician's oath into our hearts. I didn't know then that the people surrounding me would become my brothers and sisters in this war on COVID-19 and science. It is from this sacred place that I write with the utmost urgency and sincerity. I plead with the American people to open themselves and read these words. As a people, we need to come together. We need to see public health efforts as just that, public health efforts, and not as dividing lines in our politics. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, issued shelter in place. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, said older Americans were precious. I appreciated that there was still room for me. I am in my 94th year, March 17th, 2020. In the wake of Governor Greg Abbott's decision to lift the mask mandate in the state of Texas, it is more important now than ever to make the decision to wear your mask, not only for your own protection, but for the safety of those around you and for the safety of your family. Because these are real people. These are real families losing mothers and fathers. These are real healthcare workers having to watch their patients wither and die in front of them. It's a people's pandemic. Articles from Relias Media, Idaho Statesman, USA Today, Rolling Stone, Pointer, The Intelligencer, ABC, Independent, and the New York Post are woven with poems taken from articles from Datebook and the New York Times to create a program dedicated to the people of this pandemic. The coronavirus looks like a dog toy or a child's koosh ball with its primary color and fanciful shape. God, how can something so whimsical be so insidious? A viral Facebook meme claims to quote Pope Francis, calling people who refuse to wear masks and prevent the spread of COVID-19 selfish. The quote comes from Pope Francis's new book, Let Us Dream, The Path to a Better Future, which hit bookshelves Tuesday. The full quote on page 27 of the book reads, "You'll never find such people protesting the death of George Floyd or joining a demonstration because there are shanty towns where children lack water or education, or because there are whole families who have lost their income. You won't find them protesting that the astonishing amount spent on the arms trade could be used to feed the whole of the human race and school every child. On such matter, they would never protest. They are incapable of moving outside their own little world of interests. Claims that masks are dangerously incorrect, says Dr. Peter Hotz, professor and dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at the Baylor College of Medicine. In general, for a person who's healthy or an individual with moderate levels of disability, there are no health contradictions I'm aware of. This is the price we pay for underpaying our high school science teachers. Can the government legally force you to wear a mask? The answer is yes. In a pandemic, governments have the authority to do a lot of things that would otherwise be questionable. Think about it like this. The government has the right to ban smoking in public places because your smoking can affect my health. And some places have signs that say, no shoes, no shirt, no service. Just add no mask to the sign. But do you have the constitutional right to not wear a mask? The answer is no. Governments have the power to regulate in the name of safety. If reasoning alone were enough to convince people to care for themselves and others, then experts could post the evidence that masks reduce the transmission of the virus, and that would be enough. But research on seatbelt use and childhood vaccination shows that when government makes safety mandatory, people pay more attention. If only 1% of people in Utah die, why don't we have rave parties and we all get together, and who gets sick, and most people won't die, and we'll get over it. My plea is, please don't do that. The people who get sick with COVID are very, very sick, and each one is heartbreaking. I wish you could see what it's like to see someone who got COVID. They're in the ICU all alone, writing goodbye notes to their children. I wish you could see the fear in the families' faces when they see someone transferred to the intensive care unit, afraid that they're going to die, and just when you think someone is getting better, their lungs are starting to improve. And their heart stops. And they're gone. I don't want to play God. I have cried in stairwells and hallways. Life is fragile, and it could be anybody. It could be any of us. There are days I'm convinced I'm gonna get it and I'm gonna die. I think that's more emotional than scientific. Much of our fear is unspoken, for there is at last the weight of custom, the tender of rote consolation. We endure thoughts of demise and measure the distance of death. Death, too, wears a mask. In the hospital, they'll bring in a tripod and put an iPad on it so the family can see the patient. It turns out, right as this patient was FaceTiming them, his heart stopped. So we run into the room, and I hit the iPad so it fell facing the wall, and I take over chest compressions. Finally, they call the code. Time of death. I see the iPad and shit. It's still on. Then the doctor, he goes over and he gives them the bad news. And I just hear them screaming and wailing over FaceTime. A weary UK doctor walked out of the hospital where he spent New Year's Eve treating COVID-19 patients and into a crowd of maskless protesters shouting, "COVID is a hoax." If it's a hoax, let's take all of these imbeciles inside the COVID ward without PPE. Let's see how brave they really feel when confronted with the reality of people choking to death. The public health initiatives have been leveraged into political platforms, but I urge you to consider this. You and your life are worth more than a vote. Medicine is not a business because human lives are not a commodity, yet lives are being reduced to red and blue lines and a black bubble on a ballot. Our cure will only come once the human lives around us become as important as our politics.